about so far, all the discussions which have taken place at COP15, or indeed at all the previous COPs, have taken place in the context of what could be described as end-of-the-pipe solutions. In other words, once the problem has already begun to play out, right at the end of the process, you try to regulate that problem and deal with it. And specifically in this case, what we're looking at is that all the discussions that are taking place are about reducing demand. They're about demand-side solutions for carbon-based energy. And everyone is being prompted in these talks, whether they succeed or fail, and obviously they go, the discussion doesn't push them nearly far enough. Everyone is being prompted to talk about reducing demand. But there is no discussion whatsoever about the issue of supply. It doesn't even feature in these talks. And any good climate agreement, I believe, would start with the issue of supply. Because it's a very simple formulation. We've seen as these two critical papers in Nature, I go on and on about this, and I'm sorry it's so boring, but this is really important stuff. These two critical papers in Nature, published in April this year, which show that as an absolute maximum, we can use 60% of current reserves of conventional fossil fuels. That's coal, oil and gas. And it's even before you look at the unconventional fuels like the tar sands and the ore emulsion and the bitumen and the rest of it and the oil shales. 60% of current reserves of coal, oil and gas is a maximum, the absolute maximum, the unsafe maximum we could use if we don't want to go beyond 2 degrees of warming, let alone any lower threshold which we don't want to cross. And so, as an absolute minimum, any agreement which is struck through this process, or rather through the process which will have to succeed this process, must have an agreement to leave a certain proportion of the world's fossil fuels in the ground. There are two very simple, basic factors here, which if we don't get right, we don't have a meaningful climate agreement. 1, leave trees standing. 2, leave fossil fuels in the ground. These are not difficult concepts to get your head around. And unless governments are prepared to identify that fraction of the global fossil fuel reserve which will be left in the ground, and then to impose a global moratorium on further prospecting for fossil fuels, we will inevitably breach that 2-degree limit. That's obvious. And the problem we've got, of course, is that those who have already made their investments in fossil fuels and see the future as being the playing out of those investments have an extremely powerful interest in ensuring that the value of those investments is upheld. Whereas those who might invest in the future in renewables, if the price is right and if the market conditions are correct, have a much less powerful interest because they don't actually have anything to defend at the moment. They're not going to lose their livelihood if renewables don't take off. They might not just be able to exploit new opportunities. And while there is no overall limit on the amount of fossil fuel that is extracted, that extraction continues to undermine all the other goals which have been expressed by the Conference of the Parties. And it's extremely hard to limit demand if you're not limiting supply, because the price of fossil fuels remains very low. That undermines the alternatives, that creates a very major incentive not to move out of them as far as the remainder of the economy is concerned. So my 2 proposals, which I really beg people to take up for what a good climate agreement will contain, leave trees standing and leave fossil fuels in the ground.